The nurses froze when the roar of engines shattered the quiet night. It wasn't a sound hospitals were used to, not the low hum of an ambulance or the steady beep of monitors. This was thunder. 12 motorcycles roaring through the downpour like a storm with purpose. Rain hammered the glass as headlights cut across the parking lot. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss, and then they walked in. Black leather, boots slick with mud, patches gleaming under fluorescent light. Every patient at the nurse's station turned to look. Every heartbeat in that corridor seemed to pause. No one spoke. The nurse at the front desk, Mara, swallowed hard. Visiting hours are over," she said softly, voice trembling. The tallest of them, a man with gray streaks in his beard and eyes like cold rain, stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "We're not here to visit," he said. "We're here to say goodbye," Mara blinked. "Goodbye?" He nodded slowly, then motioned to the others. Each man carried something small, a folded flag, a photograph, a single rose wrapped in plastic. One held a pair of worn dog tags. Another clutched a faded leather vest with patches so old the thread had turned white. It was then that Mara saw what they'd written across the back of their jackets. Iron Hawks MC, her breath caught. She'd heard of them, a motorcycle club known for protecting veterans, runaways, and anyone the system forgot. Some called them outlaws, others called them heroes, but none of that mattered now. Because there was something in the way they stood, silent, heads bowed, dripping rain onto the tile, that didn't feel like a threat. It felt like grief. Behind them, one of the security guards stepped forward, hand hovering near his radio. "Sir, I'm gonna need you to—" "Don't," Mara whispered, placing her hand on his arm. "Something's different. Let them talk." The gray-bearded man met her gaze again. His name patch read Jax. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from the road, but the kind that comes from loss. "We won't cause trouble," he said quietly. "We just need a few minutes." "Room 214. Mara froze. Room 214. That was the room with the veteran, the one who'd come in 3 nights ago after collapsing outside the highway diner. Her stomach turned cold. "You knew him?" she asked. Jax's voice softened. "We rode with him. He was one of ours." The hallway felt heavier somehow. Even the hum of machines seemed to fade. Mara hesitated, glancing down the hall. She could still see the door to 214, slightly ajar. Inside, the body had been prepared for transport an hour ago. The nurse who'd stayed with him, Sarah, was still there, refusing to leave until the orderlies arrived. Jax must have read the hesitation on her face. "Please," he said, just one word. Raw, unpolished, human. No demand, no threat. Just a plea. Mara nodded once. "This way." As they followed her through the corridor, patients peeked out of their rooms, curious, uneasy, whispering. The sound of the biker's boots on tile echoed like a slow drumbeat. By the time they reached room 214, even the monitors along the hall seemed quieter. Inside, the light was dim. Sarah sat beside the bed, hands folded around a worn photograph. The man in the bed looked peaceful now, the storm in his body finally still. She looked up as the door opened. At first, she tensed, the same instinct every nurse has when something unexpected happens on a quiet night. But then she saw their faces. The sorrow, the respect, the exhaustion. "Were you with him?" she asked softly. Jack stepped forward, removing his gloves. "Yeah," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Name's Alan Reeves. We called him Reaper. He saved all of us more times than we can count." Sarah's throat tightened. She'd known his name from the chart, but she hadn't known what it meant. She'd only known the man who'd gripped her wrist in the ER 3 nights ago, whispering through oxygen tubes. "Tell my brothers I made it home." He'd been unconscious after that. She'd stayed anyway, held his hand while his heart gave out at 3:47 a.m. She rose slowly, setting the photo down. "I'm so sorry," she said. "He didn't have anyone listed as next of kin." Jax's gaze softened. "He did," he said quietly. "He had us." The others stepped in behind him, forming a loose circle around the bed. No one spoke. No one needed to. The silence was sacred. The smell of disinfectant and rain hung in the air. Sarah stepped back, watching as Jax reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, battered metal box. He opened it carefully. Inside were medals, service ribbons, a folded flag, and a small Polaroid of 12 men standing beside a rusted Harley. He placed it on the bed. "Rest easy, brother," he said, voice breaking. "The road's clear now." The men bowed their heads. One began to hum, low and rough, a sound that filled the sterile room like a hymn. It wasn't a song Sarah recognized, but she felt it, deep in her chest, where sorrow meets something close to grace. Mara stood at the door, tears slipping down her cheeks. Even the security guard had taken off his cap, and for a few minutes that hospital room stopped being just a room. It became a sanctuary. When the hum faded, Jax turned to Sarah. "You stayed with him," he said. She nodded. "He didn't want to die alone." Jax looked at her like he'd just met the last good thing in a broken world. "Then you didn't just do your job," he said softly. "You honored him," Sarah's lips trembled. "He was kind. Even when he was in pain, he said, 'Thank you.' I thought that was rare." Jax smiled faintly. Reaper never forgot his manners. "Even in hell," a faint laugh rippled through the group, a sad, grateful sound. Then Jax turned serious again. "We want to do something for you," he said. "For what you did for him," Sarah frowned. "You don't have to," but he shook his head. "Yeah, we do. Because people like you're the reason men like him ever had a chance to come home." Outside the window, lightning flashed across the night sky. Inside, something changed. Not just for Sarah or the Hawks, but for everyone who witnessed it. The nurses, the patients, the guard. It wasn't chaos that had walked into that hospital. It was love, disguised in leather and rain. The room was still echoing with the low hum the bikers had sung when the last of them finally removed his helmet. Rain dripped from the edge as he set it down beside the bed, the dull clink cutting through the silence. Sarah stood frozen, her hands clasped together, still trembling from everything she'd just witnessed. Jack stepped closer to the bedside table and carefully lifted the folded hospital sheet that covered the late soldier's chest. His face softened when he looked down. "We called him Reaper because he was never scared of death," he murmured. "But he was always scared of one thing, dying alone." Sarah swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight, as if the truth in his words had reached into her own chest. "He didn't," she whispered. "I promise, he didn't." Jax nodded slowly. "You kept your promise before even knowing you'd made one." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, one of the younger bikers, tall, broad-shouldered, his face streaked with rain, reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in a damp plastic bag. He handed it to Jax. Jax took a slow breath, peeled the bag open, and revealed a crumpled, dirt-stained envelope. On the front, barely legible beneath smudges of oil and time, were the words, "For Sarah, the nurse at St. Mercy." Her heart stuttered. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "For me?" Jax handed her the envelope gently, like something sacred. "He made us promise," he said. "If he ever went down for good, we'd find the nurse who saved him last time." "The last time?" Jax's gaze dropped to the floor, his voice lowering. 3 years ago. Afghanistan vet. PTSD. Found him outside a diner off Highway 47. Same one you said he collapsed near. He'd been trying to clean up, start over. Said a nurse once pulled him back from the edge when he OD'd after his discharge. Said she was the only one who looked him in the eyes and didn't see a ghost." Sarah froze. Her hand went to her chest, like she was trying to hold her heart still. "Oh my God." She remembered. The night shift. The overdose patient brought in under a fake name. The one who wouldn't say where he was from but kept whispering, "Don't tell the VA." He'd given her a military patch as thanks when he was discharged, a simple hawk with silver wings. She'd kept it in her locker ever since. Her fingers shook as she tore open the envelope. Inside was a single folded note, written in shaky handwriting. "If you're reading this, Sarah, it means the road finally caught up with me. I didn't have much left to give, but I never forgot the nurse who reminded me I was still human." You said once that healing isn't just medicine, it's kindness. You were right. I wanted to come back and thank you. Guess I ran out of miles. Tell the Iron Hawks I made it home. And if they ever find you, tell them you were the one who gave Reaper his last bit of peace. Thank you for not letting me die a stranger." By the time she finished, her tears had already blurred the words. No one moved. Not the bikers, not the nurses in the doorway who had gathered quietly after hearing the engines. Even the beeping of the machines seemed to hold its breath. Jax rubbed a hand across his beard. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "He never stopped talking about you, you know. Said you had the same eyes as his sister, always looking for who's hurting, not who's guilty." Sarah shook her head, tears falling freely now. "I didn't even know his name then." "He wouldn't tell me. I just called him Sir." "He told us you called him Sir," Jack said with a faint smile. "He said no one had called him that since the army. He liked it more than he admitted." She let out a shaky laugh through the tears. The kind of laugh that breaks something open inside you. Then one of the other bikers, an older man with tattoos creeping up his neck, stepped forward holding a small duffel bag. "This was in his saddlebag," he said. "He wanted you to have it." Sarah hesitated before unzipping it. Inside was a single nurse's badge, cracked and worn but still recognizable. Her name, Sarah Whitman, she gasped. "Where did he—" "He kept it," Jack said softly. "You must have dropped it the night you treated him. He said it was his lucky charm." Sarah pressed the badge to her chest, her shoulders trembling. He really carried this all these years?" Jax nodded. "Said it reminded him that there were still angels on the ground." The words broke her. She turned away, covering her face, sobs escaping into her palms. Mara stepped forward, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. But Sarah barely felt it. She had no idea the man she'd helped years ago was the same one she'd watched die days earlier. No idea that kindness she'd almost forgotten had echoed all the way back to her. It wasn't coincidence. It was full circle. The bikers stood quietly while she composed herself, the weight of what had just unfolded hanging over everyone. Then Jax reached into his jacket again and pulled out a small hand-carved wooden cross. "He made this after rehab," he said. "Used to carry it everywhere. Said he wanted it buried with him." Sarah took it, running her thumb over the rough edges. "He'll get it," she whispered. "I'll make sure." Jax gave a slow nod. "We'll hold the service tomorrow. But before that, there's something you need to see." Sarah frowned. "What is it?" Jax turned toward the others, and they all exchanged silent looks, the kind that said everything without words. "Reaper left something for you," he said. "Not just a letter." "A promise." Sarah blinked, confused. "What kind of promise?" Jax's jaw clenched. His voice dropped, low and certain. "The kind that's written in blood and road dust. He saved our lives once. You saved his twice, and you didn't even know it. Now it's our turn to pay that forward." Before Sarah could speak, the hospital intercom crackled. "Code Blue, emergency room, Code Blue." The bikers turned toward the sound instantly, instincts kicking in. Jax looked back at her. "That's your fight," he said quietly. "We'll be right here when you're done." Sarah nodded, swiping her tears and rushing out, her heart still pounding. She didn't know it yet. But that Code Blue was about to tie every loose thread of that night together and reveal the real reason the bikers had come, because Reaper's death wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something none of them saw coming. The overhead speaker's voice crackled again, urgent, sharp, like the sound of a storm breaking through glass. "Code Blue, emergency room." The words hit Sarah like a jolt of lightning. Without a second thought, she shoved the letter into her pocket, tightened the band on her wristwatch, and ran. Her shoes squeaked against the polished floor as she flew past the nurse's station. Behind her, the bikers exchanged looks. They didn't belong in hospitals. They were men of open skies and long roads. But something in that nurse's urgency made them follow anyway. "Jax, what do we do?" Rico asked, glancing toward the sliding doors. Jax didn't hesitate. "We don't leave her." They trailed behind her, leather vests gleaming under fluorescent lights, rainwater dripping from their boots. The hall seemed to quiet when they passed, the sight so unusual that even other nurses stopped to stare. Sarah pushed through the double doors of the ER. The smell of antiseptic hit her first. Then the sound, the steady monotone of a flatlining heart monitor. "Who's the patient?" she shouted, rushing to the bed. "Teen male," a doctor called out. "Found unconscious by the highway. No ID, severe shock and dehydration. Multiple bruises and—" The words fell away as Sarah froze. Her breath hitched. The boy on the bed couldn't have been older than 16. His face was pale beneath the hospital lights, lashes long against his cheek. But what made her heart stop was what hung loosely around his neck, a thin chain. With a familiar charm, a hawk, silver wings tarnished with dirt, Sarah's knees almost buckled. That's Reaper's insignia," she whispered. Jax, standing just behind her, stepped closer. His eyes widened when he saw it. "That's one of ours," he said softly. "That's an Iron Hawk's charm. We give those to blood family, or someone we swear to protect." The doctor glanced at them, startled. "You know this boy?" Jax's jaw tightened. "Not yet." "But we will." Sarah was still frozen, her pulse pounding in her ears. The memory came back like a flood. Reaper's letter, his words. "Tell the Iron Hawks I made it home." Was this what he meant? The boy stirred weakly on the bed. "Mom," he mumbled, voice barely a breath. "Mom, please wake up." Sarah's heart clenched. She leaned forward, brushing the hair from his forehead. Hey, you're safe now. You're in a hospital, okay? Can you tell me your name?" The boy's lips trembled. His eyes fluttered open, dark, frightened, but defiant. "Tyler," he rasped. "Tyler," she repeated gently. "Do you know what happened?" He tried to shake his head, but the motion was weak. "They took my mom." "We were running." I think they caught her." Jax and the others went still. Rico cursed under his breath. Sarah's chest tightened. "Who, Tyler?" "Who took her?" The boy's gaze drifted toward the door, unfocused. "The men with the black truck? They said she owed them. Said Reaper wasn't here to protect us anymore." The room went dead silent. Jax's hand curled into a fist at his side. He stepped closer to the bed, his voice low, controlled. "You said Reaper?" Tyler nodded weakly. "He was my dad." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Every sound in the room, the monitors, the doctors, the chatter, faded to nothing. Reaper, the soldier, the man whose letter still sat in her pocket, the man who had carried her nurse's badge across state lines and years of loneliness. He had a son, and that son was lying right in front of her, bruised, terrified, and hunted. Sarah turned to Jax, eyes wide. "This is why you're here, Reaper." He knew. Jax's jaw clenched. Yeah, he knew the storm was coming. The doctor, still hovering by the monitors, looked between them, confused. "Is someone going to tell me what's going on?" Sarah swallowed hard. "That boy's father died 3 days ago. A veteran. His body was just claimed." The doctor blinked, stunned. "Then how—" "He left a family behind," Jax interrupted quietly. "And apparently that family's still in danger." Sarah pressed a hand to Tyler's arm. "You're safe now, okay? You're with me. You're with the people your dad trusted." Tyler's eyes fluttered open again. You knew my dad?" "I did," she said softly. "He talked about you. That wasn't true, not exactly. But maybe, somehow it was." The monitors beeped steadily now. Tyler's pulse was weak but holding. Sarah gave instructions to the other nurses, her voice steadier than she felt. "Get him into observation once he stabilizes. I'll take responsibility for his care." Jax nodded in approval, then turned to the rest of his crew. "We're not letting those men anywhere near him." "Understood?" "Understood," they echoed. Sarah gave him a look, half gratitude, half disbelief. "You're really going to stay here? In a hospital?" Jax smirked faintly. "Reaper's blood is in that kid. That makes him one of us." She wanted to say something about rules or boundaries, or how hospitals didn't allow armed bikers to patrol the corridors. But instead, she just nodded, because for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was fighting alone. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, streaking the glass. Jax turned toward the window, watching the storm build. "They'll come for him," he muttered. "And when they do, we'll be waiting." Sarah followed his gaze, her reflection beside his in the glass. two different worlds suddenly colliding in a single night. Behind them, Tyler shifted in his sleep, clutching the small hawk pendant in his fist. And in that moment, Sarah realized something she couldn't explain. It wasn't chance that brought them here. It was a promise kept by a man who'd already gone. The promise that no one, not even death, could silence loyalty. And as thunder rolled outside, the Iron Hawks made theirs. They would not let Reaper's boy fall. Not on their watch. By dawn, the hospital smelled of rain and burnt coffee, the kind of morning that carried both exhaustion and resolve. Sarah leaned against the break room counter, a paper cup in her hands, staring at the small rip in her glove. Her eyes were bloodshot, but sleep wasn't an option. Not with that boy lying 2 rooms away under police, guard, and 3 silent bikers standing watch outside. Except they weren't really police guard. They were the Iron Hawks, and right now, the hospital had no idea half its security was running on leather vests, tattoos, and pure loyalty. Through the glass window, she could see them. Jax by the door, arms crossed, posture still as stone. Rico, pacing, muttering about protocol that clearly didn't exist. And Big Mike sitting just inside the ward, watching Tyler's door like a loyal dog. Sarah couldn't explain it, but the sight made her feel safe. Still, the question that had haunted her all night wouldn't fade. Why had Reaper's son, that boy, been running for his life? She didn't have long to think about it. The automatic doors at the far end of the corridor hissed open. 2 men in black suits stepped inside. Clean shoes, expensive watches, eyes too sharp for comfort. Hospital administration, maybe? No, their stride was too confident. Controlled. Can I help you? Sarah asked, stepping forward, adjusting her badge. The taller one smiled, a kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. We're here to speak with the young patient admitted last night. Teen male, no ID. Sarah felt her stomach drop. I'm sorry, he's not cleared for visitors yet. The man's grin didn't falter. We're not visitors. We're from the Department of Veteran Affairs. We have business concerning the late Sergeant Marcus Reed. Sarah froze. Reaper. His real name. They knew. The man reached into his coat and produced a file, official seal, typed cover sheet. But something about it didn't sit right. The font, the creased corner, the way the ink smudged when he thumbed it, fake. Jax had noticed, too. He was already moving before Sarah could even breathe. Hey! His voice cut through the corridor, low and dangerous. Funny thing about VA agents, they usually come with an escort, or a call ahead. Both men turned slightly, sizing him up. And you are? Someone who knows a lie when he hears one. The second man, smaller, shifted his stance subtly, right hand brushing against his belt. Not a cop's move. A weapon reach. Jack saw it immediately. Don't, he warned, his voice soft but edged. You'll regret it. Rico appeared beside him, cracking his knuckles with a grin. Hospital rules say no fighting. But if you trip into a wall, I think that's fair game. Sarah stepped forward fast, intercepting before the situation could ignite. Gentlemen, she said, injecting her voice with the firm, clinical calm that came from years of emergencies. If you're from the VA, you'll have no problem waiting while I verify your credentials. The taller one's eyes flicked to her ID badge. Nurse Sarah Collins, former field medic, right? Her pulse skipped. How do you... He smiled again. Slow this time. Deliberate. We do our homework. Jax moved between them instantly, blocking her from view. You've got 10 seconds to leave, the smaller man sneered. You don't scare us, biker. That was a mistake because Jax didn't need to scare anyone. He just looked at them, calm, eyes steady, like a man who'd already buried his fear somewhere deep. 5 seconds, he said. The taller one glanced around, realized the nurses had gone silent, the guards had stopped moving, and the bikers had formed a quiet half-circle without a single raised voice. They left. Not quickly, not cowardly, but with the stiff, quiet anger of men who weren't finished. When the doors hissed shut behind them, Sarah exhaled shakily. Who were they? She whispered. Jax didn't answer right away. He turned toward the window, jaw tight. Whoever they were, they're not done. Reaper left something behind and they want it. Sarah frowned. You think it's about money? He shook his head slowly. Reaper didn't die for money. He died for someone else's secret. And suddenly, it all clicked. The letter, the chain, the boy's terrified words about the black truck. This wasn't just about a grieving son. It was about something much darker, something Reaper had discovered before he died. Sarah's voice was low. Then Tyler's in more danger than we thought. Yeah, Jack said, rubbing his jaw. And if those men come back, they won't be asking next time. He turned to his crew. We're locking this place down. Rico, you take the west wing. Big Mike, stay by the elevators. No one gets through that doesn't have a badge and a real reason. Rico grinned. Got it, boss. I always wanted to scare hospital security. Sarah couldn't help it. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she turned toward Tyler's room. The boy was still asleep, his small hand clutching the hawk pendant. His face looked peaceful now, but faint bruises still colored his neck, like fingerprints. She reached out and adjusted the blanket, her throat tightening. Jax watched her quietly. You okay? She shook her head. No, but I'm not leaving him. Good, he said. Because neither are we. Outside, thunder rolled again, echoing through the parking lot. And in that sound, in that storm, something shifted. The Iron Hawks weren't just a biker gang anymore. They were guardians. Of a promise, of a boy, of a fallen brother's last wish. But none of them knew that before the night was over. The same men who had walked out of those hospital doors would return, and this time they wouldn't come alone. The rain had started again. Thin, whispering streaks against the hospital windows, like the world itself was trying to hush what was coming. Tyler stirred in his sleep, his small hand still gripping the chain around his neck. The hawk pendant gleamed faintly in the dim room light, old silver, worn smooth from years of being held too tight. Sarah sat beside him, exhaustion pulling at her eyes, but her hand never left the boy's arm. She'd worked enough night shifts to know when fear was sleeping just beneath the skin. The door opened quietly. Jack stepped in carrying 2 coffees. You should rest, he said softly. Sarah looked up, a weary smile touching her lips. That's rich, coming from the guy who hasn't blinked since last night. He chuckled, handing her the cup. Fair enough. But something tells me neither of us is sleeping until we figure out why men with fake VA badges want this kid dead. He pulled a chair beside her. For a long moment, they sat in silence, just the low hum of the machines and Tyler's steady breathing between them. Then Sarah said, He keeps saying his dad told him to protect the bird. He means this necklace. She hesitated. I thought maybe it was just a sentimental thing. But now? Jax nodded, leaning forward. Reaper wasn't the sentimental type. That pendant's been around longer than the club itself. He used to wear it every day. Said it was the one thing the government couldn't take from him. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Jack sighed, running a hand over his face. Reaper wasn't just a biker. Before that, he was special ops. Black ops kind of stuff. The kind of missions you don't read about because they never happened. When he came back, he was different. Quiet, paranoid. Kept a journal but never let anyone read it. When he found out he was dying, he made me promise. He stopped. His jaw clenched. He made me promise to protect his son. Said if anyone ever came looking for him, it meant they found out what he'd hidden. Sarah's eyes widened. Hidden? What? Jax looked toward Tyler. That's what I intend to find out. He reached for the pendant gently, careful not to wake the boy. Turning it over, he noticed a small indentation on the back, barely visible, a groove running in a perfect circle. You see that? Sarah leaned in. Like a latch, Jax pulled a pocket knife and pried carefully. With a faint click, the back of the pendant popped open, revealing something no larger than a fingernail, a tiny folded micro SD card wedged inside. Sarah inhaled sharply. Oh my God. Reaper, you clever bastard, Jax murmured. He hid it in plain sight. Before Sarah could respond, her pager buzzed, a loud, shrill beep that made Tyler stir. She silenced it quickly. Emergency in the ICU, I have to go. Jax nodded. Go, I'll stay here with him. She hesitated, her eyes meeting his. Be careful. Those men, they'll come back for this. He gave her a grim smile. Let 'em try. When Sarah left, Jax pulled out his phone, sliding the SD card into a small reader. The screen blinked, loaded, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Classified reports. Audio logs, a map with coordinates marked in red, and a single folder labeled Project Hollow Wing. He opened it. A video began to play, grainy, time-stamped 3 years ago. Reaper sat in what looked like a desert outpost, face gaunt, voice low. If you're watching this, it means they found me. I tried to expose it. The tests, the civilian casualties, the cover-ups. They said it was about defense, but it wasn't. They were making weapons from our dead, soldiers, friends, turning them into ghosts for hire. And when I refused to keep quiet, they burned the files. But I kept one piece of proof. He looked straight into the camera then, tired, haunted eyes. The proof is with my son. Don't let them take it. Tell him his father wasn't a monster. I was trying to make it right. The feed cut to static. Jax leaned back, staring at the screen. His fists trembled. Son of a... He didn't finish. The door creaked open. Big Mike stepped in, his face pale. We've got company. Jax's eyes narrowed. How many? 3 vans. Parked right across the street. Tinted windows, no plates. Jax stood immediately. Rico! Already locking down the exits? Good. No one moves till I say. He pocketed the SD card and looked toward Tyler's bed. The boy had woken up now, his wide, frightened eyes darting from Jax to Mike. Hey, kid. Jax softened his voice. Remember what your dad told you? About trusting the Hawks? Tyler nodded weakly. Good. Then you do exactly what I say. We're getting you out of here. Downstairs, the hospital buzzed with its usual chaos. Patients wheeled through hallways, phones ringing, nurses moving fast. But outside, under the flickering streetlights, the world was different. 3 black SUVs sat idling, engines humming like predators waiting to pounce. Inside the lead car, the same tall man from before adjusted his earpiece. Target located. North Wing, room 214, extract the boy. Terminate any interference. The rain fell harder. Sarah was halfway to the ICU when she saw them. Men in plain clothes moving with the wrong kind of confidence, spreading through the hall like a silent wave. Her gut screamed danger before her brain caught up. She spun, running back toward Tyler's room, heart pounding. When she burst through the door, Jax already had Tyler in his arms, his jacket thrown over the boy's head. Big Mike stood by the window, pulling open the fire escape. What's happening? She gasped. They're here, Jax said. They're coming for him. Through the elevators, Mike shouted. We're boxed in! Jax cursed under his breath. He looked around, then at Sarah. You trust me? She blinked. Do I have a choice? He grinned, a flash of the old soldier in him. Didn't think so. Let's move. They slipped out the side door, ducking behind supply carts and linen bins as alarms began to wail. Nurses shouted, security scrambled, and the sterile hallways filled with the chaos of something that didn't belong here. Violence. Behind them, footsteps thundered. Jax shoved open the stairwell door. Go, go! Sarah ran beside him, helping Tyler keep pace. The boy's breath came in sharp sobs. They're coming! They're coming again! Not this time, Jax growled. They reached the basement, an old service corridor lined with pipes and flickering bulbs. The smell of bleach and rust hung thick in the air. Big Mike kicked open a side hatch that led to the loading dock, but before they could step through, a voice echoed behind them. Going somewhere, it was the tall man again. His gun was raised. Behind him, 3 more agents spread out, cutting off every escape. Jax stepped in front of the others, hands raised slightly. You're making a big mistake, the man smirked. No, you are. That boy has something that doesn't belong to you. Jax's voice was steady. You mean something that proves what you did. The man's smile faded. You don't understand who you're dealing with. Neither did your boss, Jax said, pulling back his jacket, revealing the chain. And look where that got him. For a heartbeat, the hallway went still. Then everything happened at once. The man fired. Jax tackled Tyler to the ground. Mike lunged. Sarah screamed. The shot hit the wall, shattering a pipe. Steam burst out, filling the corridor with blinding fog. Jax grabbed Tyler's hand and ran. "Move!" They burst through the loading dock doors into the storm outside. Rain lashed down in sheets. Rico was waiting, engine roaring, a black Harley gleaming under the flickering light. "Hop on!" he yelled. Jax threw Tyler onto the bike and climbed behind him. Sarah followed, jumping onto Mike's. "Where to?" Rico shouted over the rain. "Anywhere but here!" Jax yelled back. As they tore into the storm, the hospital alarms faded behind them, replaced by sirens, gunfire, and thunder. Sarah clung to Mike's jacket, her heart hammering. The boy's arms tightened around Jax, trembling, but for the first time, he didn't look back. That night, the news would talk about a disturbance at Mercy General Hospital. No mention of black vans, no mention of the boy, no mention of the bikers who vanished into the storm, with the only proof that could bring a corrupt machine crashing down. But inside that storm, on that empty highway, the Iron Hawks made a silent promise. This wasn't just Reaper's fight anymore. It was theirs, and they weren't done yet. The storm followed them halfway across the county, a wall of rain and wind that swallowed the night, roaring against their engines. Headlights blurred. Tires hissed over slick asphalt, but no one stopped. By the time the bikers reached their hideout, an old auto shop buried deep in the woods, once Reaper's workshop, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The sign out front still read, "Hawks Repair and Salvage," its paint chipped, the neon long dead. Jax killed the engine and swung off the bike, helping Tyler down. The boy's jeans were soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, but his grip on the pendant never loosened. Sarah followed close behind, still shaking from adrenaline. Rico yanked the garage door open, the metal screeching against the silence. "Home sweet home," he muttered. Inside, the air smelled like motor oil and rain-soaked leather. Old photos lined the back wall. Snapshots of the original Iron Hawks, Reaper, Jax, Big Mike, and a handful of men whose faces had long since faded into ghosts. Sarah looked around, taking it all in. "You live here?" Jax gave a dry laugh. "Live? Nah, hide, fix, heal. Depends on the week." Tyler's small voice broke through the tension. "This was my dad's place, wasn't it?" Jax looked down at him, that same sharp gaze Reaper once had in his youth. "Yeah, kid, it was." Tyler's eyes roamed the space, landing on a half-finished bike near the corner, sleek, black steel gleaming beneath a tarp. The name Hollow Wing was etched on the gas tank in faint silver letters. He walked toward it slowly. "He said he was building this for me." One day, the room went quiet. Jack swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. He didn't lie. They got to work. Rico locked the doors. Mike checked the perimeter cameras, grainy feeds showing the long dirt road and tree line beyond. Sarah found a first aid kit and tended to the cuts on Tyler's hands while Jack set up the laptop again, the tiny SD card glinting beside it. "This thing," Sarah said softly, wrapping a bandage. "It's proof, isn't it?" Jax nodded, eyes on the screen. "It's more than proof. It's everything." He loaded the files again, Reaper's voice, the classified reports, the map. But this time, he opened a document labeled Testimony 9A. A transcript appeared, lines and lines of testimony from soldiers, scientists, even civilians, all detailing the same project, Hollow Wing. Government experiments disguised as defense research, chemical testing on soldiers' remains. And one operation that hit too close to home, Operation Wraith, conducted 3 years earlier in Kabul, where Reaper's unit had gone dark for 6 weeks. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God! They made ghosts," Jax muttered. "Weaponized trauma, reanimated intelligence data from the dead. And when Reaper tried to leak it, they erased him." Tyler whispered, "So my dad—" "He wasn't bad," Jax's voice softened. "No, kid. He was the best man I ever knew. He just saw something too big to stay quiet about." The rain drummed harder outside, echoing through the tin roof like a heartbeat. Sarah looked at Jax. If this gets out, they'll come after you all. He met her eyes. Let them. We're not the kind of men who run. But even as he said it, Mike's radio crackled. Faint static, then a voice. Command, this is Delta 4. The signal's confirmed. Repeat, the Hawk's location is confirmed. Jax froze. How the hell? Rico swore. They tracked the card. Jax yanked the SD card out, snapping it in half. Too late, he growled. Everyone move! Outside, the forest lit up with the sweep of headlights. Black SUVs again. More of them this time. Armed men poured out, forming a perimeter. The hum of drones filled the air, small black shapes circling overhead. Mike cursed under his breath. We're surrounded. Jax turned to Sarah. Take Tyler, back room. There's a tunnel under the floor, goes half a mile through the woods. You'll come out by the old quarry. She hesitated. What about you? We'll buy you time. Tyler grabbed Jax's jacket. No, I'm not leaving you. Jax knelt, gripping his shoulders. Listen, Hawk Jr., you're not running away yet. You're flying low. Your dad used to say, a hawk never hides. It hunts when the time's right. You got me? Tears filled the boy's eyes, but he nodded. Sarah squeezed Jax's hand, a silent promise, then led Tyler toward the back. The floor hatch creaked open, revealing a dark crawl space. When it shut behind them, Jax turned to his men. Lock and load! The first flashbang hit seconds later. The front windows exploded inward, shards of glass, a burst of white light, and the deafening crack of sound. Jax hit the ground, rolled behind the workbench, and fired twice toward the doorway. Mike covered the side entrance while Rico dragged an overturned metal cabinet for cover. Bullets tore through the garage walls, ricocheting off tools and bike frames. Hold the line, Jax shouted. Another SUV roared up the hill. Floodlights cut through the smoke, and through it stepped the tall man again, calm as death. He shouted into a radio, "Bring them in alive if possible." The files might still be recoverable. Jax gritted his teeth. Not tonight, he fired, hitting one of the agents in the shoulder. The man stumbled, falling back. But there were too many. Mike grabbed a smoke grenade from the shelf, yanked the pin, and tossed it toward the open doors. The thick fog rolled through the shop, swallowing everything. Back exit, Jax barked. They sprinted for the service door, Jax pausing only to grab the hard drive from the table. The files might be corrupted, but Reaper's truth deserved a chance. Outside, the storm had become a torrent again, sheets of rain turning the dirt to mud. Engines roared. The Hawks jumped onto their bikes, tires spinning. Go! Jax yelled. As they sped into the forest, bullets tore through the trees behind them. The headlights from the SUVs cut short as the bikes vanished into the night. Meanwhile, deep in the tunnel, Sarah crawled through the narrow passage, guiding Tyler with a flashlight. The air was damp, heavy with earth. The boy's breath came fast. What if they catch us? She squeezed his hand. They won't. Ahead, faint moonlight shimmered, the tunnel's end. She pushed the hatch open, and the cool air hit them both like freedom. They emerged in the old quarry, a wide, silent clearing surrounded by jagged stone and rain-slick moss. Sarah looked around, heart pounding. Now what? Tyler whispered. Before she could answer, the faint sound of engines echoed through the valley, familiar, deep, and powerful. She turned toward the sound. And there they were. The Hawks. Mud-splattered, bruised, but alive. Jax cut the engine, dismounted, and walked toward them. His jacket was torn, his face streaked with rain and grime. But when he saw the boy safe, his shoulders finally eased. You made it, Sarah breathed. Jax nodded. Barely. Tyler ran to him, wrapping his arms around his waist. I thought, Jax ruffled his hair. Hey, you think a few suits could take down a Hawk? Rico limped up beside them, grinning despite a bloody lip. They're gonna need a lot more than that. They all stood there for a moment, in the middle of the storm, breathless and alive. Then Sarah said softly, What now? Jax looked at the hard drive in his hand. Now we finish what Reaper started. He turned toward the forest, where somewhere beyond the government men regrouped, already planning their next move. But Jax wasn't afraid anymore, Because tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. It was about a promise. A soldier's last mission carried on by the only family that never left him behind. The rain eased into a soft drizzle as dawn crept over the horizon. And for the first time, the Iron Hawks didn't feel like outlaws. They felt like guardians. By the time the rain stopped, dawn had spilled gold across the quarry. The storm clouds thinned to streaks of violet and gray, curling away like smoke after a battle. The Hawks stood scattered among their bikes, quiet, soaked, and exhausted. No one spoke for a long time. You could almost hear the sound of relief in their silence. Jack sat on a flat rock, elbows on his knees, the broken hard drive in one hand. The thing was dented, cracked, its LED dead. Still, he couldn't let it go. Sarah approached, wrapping a blanket around Tyler's shoulders. The boy was half asleep, his face drawn but peaceful for the first time since they'd found him. She looked at Jax. "You think there's anything left on that drive?" Jax turned the device over slowly, studying the scratches. "If there's even one voice file, one document, then it's enough. Reaper died trying to tell the truth. I can't let it die with him." Rico limped over, his jacket torn. "Problem is, boss, you just picked a fight with the same folks who trained us to lose quietly." Jax gave a tired grin. "Then it's about time they remembered who we are." He nodded toward the van they'd parked near the ridge, one of their old supply haulers, now patched with duct tape and stubbornness. Inside, an old laptop hummed weakly, hooked to a makeshift power rig. Sarah crouched beside it, connecting wires with surgeon-like precision. "All right," she said. Moment of truth. The screen flickered, glitched, then blinked to life. A single corrupted file appeared. Reaper log final WAV, no one moved. Sarah double-clicked it. Static filled the speakers, followed by a voice. Low, rough, steady. "If you're hearing this, then I didn't make it out. My name's Sergeant Daniel Reeves, codename Reaper. The Hollowing Project is not defense. It's desecration. They're using our fallen to build weapons, bodies burned and rebuilt, minds extracted. They called it salvation. I called it hell. The air seemed to freeze. Even the rain had gone still. They wanted to erase the proof, erase me. But if someone finds this, tell my boy. Tell him I never stopped fighting. For him. For every man they buried twice." Silence followed, heavy enough to make every man's throat tighten. Tyler's small voice broke it. "He didn't quit." Jax placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, kid. He finished what he started. An hour later, they were back on the road, not running, but riding with purpose. The sun was rising now, slicing through the mist like a blade. The convoy of bikes rolled east toward the city. Their destination wasn't a government building, a police station, or even a news outlet. It was something quieter, smarter. Rico explained it first. "We hit the local VA first. The Veterans Hospital downtown. There's a doctor there, Goodman. Reaper used to talk about him. If anyone'll listen, it's him." Jax nodded. "We give him the file. Let it spread from the inside. No names, no faces. Just truth." By the time they reached the hospital, the morning crowd had already started. Nurses with coffee cups, orderlies on smoke breaks, patients wheeled into sunlight for their daily dose of hope. The roar of 12 Harley engines drew every eye in the lot. People stopped mid-step, watching the line of black leather and chrome roll to a stop by the entrance. The lead nurse, a woman with salt and pepper hair and a no-nonsense stare, stepped forward. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Jax killed his engine and got off. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough but respectful. "We're here to see Dr. Goodman." Her brows rose. "You got an appointment?" Rico smirked. "Something better." "We got a reason." Inside, Dr. Goodman, mid-50s, still built like a soldier, met them in a quiet corridor lined with plaques. When Jax handed him the drive, the doctor hesitated. "What's this?" Jax looked him in the eye. "Evidence of what they did to Reaper, to you, to all of us." Goodman frowned, confused. But the moment he played the file, the color drained from his face. His hands shook before the first minute was done. "Dear God," he whispered. "I thought it was just a rumor." Jax nodded. "Not anymore." Within an hour, the hospital went into controlled chaos. Phones ringing, security called, administrators gathering in hushed circles. but not to stop them, to help them. Dr. Goodman made the call himself to the VA headquarters, to an old journalist friend who'd served in Iraq. "If you ever wanted your Pulitzer," he said into the receiver, "now's your chance." By sunset, the story hit the web. Leaked audio from fallen soldier reveals secret military project. Veterans demand investigation into Operation Hollow Wing. Within hours, hashtags were trending. Whistleblower lawyers offered protection. Military families gathered outside VA hospitals holding signs that read, "No more ghosts." Sarah watched it all from the diner's old TV, eyes wide. "You did it," she whispered when Jax returned that night, helmet under his arm. Jax smiled faintly. "We did it." Tyler came running from the back booth, clutching a small object in his hand, a repaired feather keychain, the same one his father used to keep on his bike. He held it out to Jax. "Dad would have wanted you to have this." Jax shook his head. "Nah, kid, you keep it. You're his legacy now." Tyler hesitated, then smiled. A small, brave smile that looked just like Reaper's in that old photo on the diner wall. That night, the Hawks rode again. Not for battle, not for blood, but for memory. They took the long route through the hills, where the highway bent toward the horizon, the wind cold but clean. The kind of ride that made you feel weightless, free. Rico called out over the engine roar, "You think they'll actually change anything?" Jax didn't answer right away. He watched the stars break through the thinning clouds. 1,000 pinpricks of light, each one a promise. "Maybe," he finally said. "But even if they don't, Reaper's voice is out there now. That's enough for me." Sarah's voice came through the comm. "And for me." At a rest stop overlooking the valley, they pulled over. The view was endless, a sea of lights below. The city alive and unaware that 12 men and a boy had just shifted the course of something bigger than themselves. Tyler leaned against the railing beside Jax. "Do you miss him?" Jax smiled softly. "Every day. But I think he's riding with us tonight." The boy looked up, eyes bright. "You think so?" "I know so," Jax said. He pointed toward the horizon, where a faint shape, maybe a hawk, maybe just the wind, cut across the glowing sky. "See that? That's him, watching, guiding," Tyler grinned. "Like an iron hawk." Exactly. The engines rumbled alive again, rolling into the night. That was the thing about truth. It didn't roar like thunder or strike like lightning. It whispered. It waited. And when it finally spoke, it did so through people who refused to stay silent. The Iron Hawks weren't heroes in their own eyes. They were just men who couldn't walk away. But that night, when the world began to listen, when justice stirred awake, maybe, just maybe, even the angels paused their flight to watch 12 black silhouettes racing toward dawn. Morning broke soft and golden over the diner. The world felt quieter now, not empty but peaceful, like the road itself was exhaling after holding its breath too long. For the first time in weeks, there were no headlines screaming tragedy, no late-night phone calls, no threats. Just sunlight on chrome and the faint smell of coffee drifting through the open window. The Ironhawks sat outside at their usual table. Mugs in hand, the hum of their parked bikes like a steady heartbeat behind them. It had been 3 days since the story broke. Reaper's story, Tyler's story, their story. And though the world was still trying to process it all, here, in this little corner of nowhere, the healing had already begun. Jax leaned back in his chair, boots crossed, watching as Tyler helped Sarah set up new flowers by the diner's window. The kid had been coming by every morning since. He'd stopped flinching at the sound of engines. He laughed easier now. He was free. Rico slid into the seat across from Jax, a folded newspaper under his arm. "You see this?" He laid it flat. The headline read, "Congress demands inquiry into Hollow Wing files." Below it, a small black and white photo of Daniel Reaper Reeves in uniform, smiling. "They're calling him a hero now," Rico said softly. "Guess the world finally caught up." Jack studied the photo for a moment, a quiet pride in his eyes. He always was. They just didn't see it before. Rico chuckled. Kinda like us, huh? Maybe. Jax's lips curved into the smallest smile. But I'm okay staying in the shadows. That's where we do our best work. Inside, Sarah poured another pot of coffee, her movements unhurried for once. She caught her reflection in the window, dark circles still under her eyes, but lighter somehow. Like she'd put down something heavy she didn't realize she was carrying. She watched the hawks outside and thought about the moment they'd come roaring into the hospital. No hesitation, no fear. And how that single act had cracked something open inside everyone who saw it. When the nurses cried, it wasn't from sadness. It was from seeing proof that someone still cared enough to fight, not with weapons, but with witness. Tyler came out carrying 2 plates of pancakes. Breakfast is on me today, he said proudly, placing them down. Rico raised a brow. You cooking now, kid? Tyler grinned. Sarah taught me. Said I gotta learn to feed myself if I'm gonna keep showing up here every morning, Sarah called from inside. And clean up after yourself, too. Everyone laughed. Big Mike, sitting at the end of the row, smiled wide. Man, feels like family breakfast again. Jax nodded quietly. That's because it is. A light breeze swept through, carrying the sound of a distant engine. Not from their crew, but from the highway beyond. They all turned as a group of riders approached. Not hawks, not serpents. Just strangers, other vets, other souls who'd heard about what they'd done. Their jackets bore patches from different places, Texas, Ohio, the Carolinas, but each one had something new stitched beneath the name. A single silver hawk, they parked nearby and dismounted. The leader, an older man with a long gray beard, walked over and extended a hand. You boys started something, he said. Something good. Jax stood to shake his hand. Just finished what someone else started. The man nodded. Reaper's message reached my unit. Half my guys didn't believe it at first, but when they played his voice cracked a little. Let's just say it hit home. One by one, his riders came forward, each leaving something small on the diner steps. A medal, a patch, a folded letter. A quiet tribute. When they left again, the air felt heavier, but warmer somehow, like the road itself had just bowed in gratitude. That afternoon, the Hawks rode out together one last time. Not for battle, but for remembrance. They followed the old trail road up to the ridge overlooking the valley. The same place they'd listened to Reaper's recording. Sarah rode pillion behind Jax, arms around his waist. Tyler rode in the middle with Big Mike, his tiny frame dwarfed by the massive bike. But he didn't look small anymore. He looked steady, certain. When they reached the top, the horizon stretched endlessly before them. The sky a wash of orange and rose gold. Jack stopped and took off his helmet, closing his eyes for a moment. Then he opened the small tin he carried in his jacket. Inside was a mix of road dust and ashes. Reapers. He poured them slowly into the wind. The breeze caught them, carried them out over the valley, over the forests, the fields, the roads that never ended. Tyler watched, eyes glistening. He's free now, isn't he? Jax nodded. Yeah, kid. He finally is. The wind shifted, and for a moment, they all swore they saw a hawk rise into the sky, wings wide, cutting clean through the light. Later that night, back at the diner, the neon sign buzzed faintly, the rusted halo glowing against the dark. The place was packed, not with customers, but with laughter, stories, and a sense of peace that had been missing for too long. Rico strummed a guitar in the corner. Big Mike told the same joke 3 times and no one stopped him. Sarah danced barefoot behind the counter, humming an old gospel tune. And Jax? He sat in his booth by the window, a mug of coffee growing cold beside him, watching Tyler draw something on a napkin. When the boy was done, he slid it across the table. It was a sketch, rough but clear. A hawk, wings outstretched, soaring above a row of motorcycles. Beneath it he'd written one word. Home. Jack smiled. For once words failed him. He just reached over and ruffled the boy's hair. The next morning, the world moved on. New stories, new headlines? The Hollowing investigation took months, years maybe, to unfold. But the truth had already done its work. It had spread. And somewhere on a quiet highway, 12 bikers rode again. Not for vengeance, not for glory, but because that's what they did best. They kept going. They carried stories that needed to be carried. Sometimes, they said, the strongest kind of rescue wasn't dragging someone out of a fire. It was sitting beside them long enough that they remembered how to walk again. If this story reminded you that heroes don't always wear uniforms, sometimes they wear leather and carry hope, then hit that subscribe button and join the ride. Have you ever witnessed kindness that changed someone's life? Tell us your story in the comments below. And here's a challenge for the sharp-eyed viewers. Around minute 7:36, when the camera pans to the window, there's a small detail that tells you the Hawks already knew what was coming before anyone else did. Watch again and tell us what you spotted. Only the most observant riders will catch it, because in this world, the road remembers those who never stop fighting for the truth.